right, Carina. Well, I was glancing at your resume, and it's a little bit impressive. So you graduated from MIT with a double major in math and physics. Then you went to Oxford to be a Rhodes Scholar. Then you went to Stanford to earn not just a PhD, but also a JD. I barely passed high school algebra.
Dropped out.
But then you dropped out. So I'm not even sure what my question is. It's just, how did you do all this at 24 years old?
I mean, I think it's like a typical journey of a math Olympiad kid as you go to like kind of MIT and then more math competitions, like try to do undergrad research and really your ambitions to go to grad school and be a math PhD, and hopefully you can continue in math academia and prove some of the very hard math problems that generations of mathematicians were puzzled by. I think the most interesting sort of like intellectual unlock for me is that we're in an era of AI, and why don't just build an AI mathematician? So if you think about like the lifetime of mathematician and probably two really, really hard problems would be, I think, a good life. And with AI, with a billion AI mathematician agents running every day, I think we can encounter like a lot more interesting mathematical phenomena and really just bring AI for math and AI for scientific discovery to a level that we didn't imagine before. That's why I dropped out.
Yeah, and I think it's worth telling people that your company is less than a year old, already $1.6 billion valuation, 20 employees. You're in the offices where Facebook first was. And in December, it scored a perfect 12 out of 12 on the Putnam competition. Just for people who don't know what that is, which was definitely me before I started looking into this, explain the significance of that.
Yeah, so Putnam exam is really hard. I think it's like notorious so that people generally say the median score is 0. So out of like 120 scores you could possibly score, and each problem has, I think, like 10 scores. So if you like get 1 out of the 10 steps correct, you will get at least score 1. More than 50% of math majors selected from all the amazing universities got a 0. And I think this is usually kind of like a humbling moment for even the kids who are really bright, like doing math competition all along. And people just did not like expect AI to get a perfect score on this one. So the high school level of math competition called the International Math Olympiad, many teams, OpenAI, DeepMind, all attempted it. And no one got a perfect score. I mean, they got the borderline for a gold medal, and that was like an incredible accomplishment. So Putnam being actually harder, Putnam 2025 is deemed as harder than the IMO. People just didn't expect that there will be an AI mathematician that got the 6th perfect score in human history. So 5 humans have got perfect score over a century of Putnam exam. So I think that was quite interesting. Like I definitely did not even score 40. So, and I got some award for it. So it's very interesting to see an AI just kind of like punch me in the face. It's like all these years of math training, like it's a very interesting moment.
And so you've developed AI that is very good and good at doing math. But what do you actually want to do with that?
Yeah, so there's this sort of, I guess, 2 axes. One axis is superintelligence. We're at a time where I think if you're in the sort of model layer, you really want to go for ASI, specialized superintelligence. That's one goal. That's can we have AI not replicate, but actually exceed some of the human geniuses that ever existed in history. So if you think about we are in a very recently scarce society in the sense that after Galois died from the duel, so for I think decades, group theory was set back. And Ramanujan died, and elementary, all the sort of extremely fundamental functions, formulas, properties were not discovered for the next couple of decades. So it's like humanity has been genius bound, and if you want to build an AI super intelligent mathematician, you can potentially have just really orders of magnitude more math discoveries, and that unlock is hopefully going to sort of fuse into various applied science domains, and you would imagine the collaboration between mathematicians, physicists, mathematicians, and molecular scientists, mathematicians, and computer scientists, neuroscientists, like it's to be a lot more, because previously the top 0.001% of mathematicians kind of stay in academia, stay in their pure theoretical field. They don't necessarily collaborate with applied scientists. So we understand very little about the universe. We also understand very little about the human brain. And for once in a decade, some physicists usually study string theory in PhD and realize that wasn't going anywhere, enter, theoretical computational neuroscience, and then make a lot of interesting discoveries. I know I actually studied with a bunch when I was in UCL Gatsby, and it's like, wow, like that amazing, capability of math reasoning, like applied to neuroscience, was able to corroborate with a lot of experimental, neuroscientist findings. So that's that axis of like superintelligent. There's the other axis, which is, I think, I tend to say that we are in an era of, I think, unfortunately, Schrodinger's superintelligent. So if I have an LLM that's going to tell me the mystery of the universe, and every 5 times I prompt it, actually there's one that's correct, and I don't actually know which one it is. So we have like a million lines of math proof generated, and is any human actually going to dig into the details and kind of like see, where there might be a mistake? So I would say that superintelligence is at its sort of max power when it's verified. When you know that you can just execute the output like a computer program, and when you can get sort of the verifiable signal, which is what we're doing. So all the math solutions, the PNM exam, did not need to be cross-checked by human experts. They are written in Lean, which is a computer program for math proofs. So once you run that computer program, and then it's successfully compiled under the either Safe Verify or various sort of Lean community standard, you know that it is correct. So it is actually, all the problems, must be either 10 or 0, and there's no sort of partial scoring. So that's another axis, which is, if you kind of generalize from there, you can formally verify code, and code could mean software code, and code could also mean hardware code. I think that taking the AI mathematician technology into the domain to change how hardware verification is typically done, to kind of make software verification a reality, are some of our near-term ambitions.
But in math, of course, there is a right answer.
Yeah.
With code, there's not. It's more of an art than a science. So how do you use math to verify it?
Yeah, so if you tell me what property you would like your computer program to satisfy, if you specify those things for me, you're almost like giving me the mathematical statements for me to prove. So as long as you're willing to specify things, we can make an attempt to prove it. So actually, you can make it a lot more concrete in terms of like what is safe, what is good code. I think a lot of the need for software verification has long existed. I mean, since like last century, in various like mission critical domains. Specifically, the European Space Agency Ariane's project. I mean, the spacecraft was around the time of the Challenger. People see a need to do formal verification. A lot of these formal verification were done by humans traditionally, just because you don't have any other way. And these formal verification experts, currently it's getting like less and less of a population, because there's a big sort of formal verification push around 1980s and around also like 1990s. Actually, the Paris subway system, the automatic switching, that was also formally verified. The trade union demanded that you need to formally verify, otherwise people won't be safe. So trade union for technology. Yeah, so it actually has a long history. And if you think AI has changed some of the sort of front-end software engineers' life, it has not really changed sort of like large distributed system, especially systems where like safety becomes like a non-negotiable. I think that for AI to change some of these experts' life is something that we're working toward.
And you last year hired Ken Ono, who you described as, an idol to many math students, including you. The Wall Street Journal described at the time he's leaving his tenured job to work for a 24-year-old. So what's it like having someone, twice your age, your mentor, work for you? Do you guys ever disagree? And what advice has he given you?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that. So I know Ken since I was a freshman. I applied to his REU research experience for undergrads, and it's one of the country's like most prestigious REUs. I was actually put on the wait list, so he did not consider me smart enough to work in his REU. And it was very interesting. I mean, whole summer I tried to be as productive, hardworking as I can, and I think there are like 2 or 3 papers coming out of it. Now we're at a scenario where at 10 a.m., some math professor, friend of Ken, will send us a research problem, like an open conjecture that no one has proven before, and that professor or his grad students could not make progress on it. And by 2 p.m., Axiom Prover generated thousands of lines Lean proof file back, and that professor get shocked. That's kind of it's on a daily basis, right? So if you think about how much sort of the reasoning capability has gained and what that means for mathematicians, it's actually not a competition. It's something that's quite refreshing to see, is that you can scale your impact. You can actually have a chance of finding out the mystery of all the math problems that you care about. And that just was never the case. I mean, especially with kind of federal funding cuts, and NSF and all the math departments, people are finding, there are less headcounts for grad students and for the people to really try to explore all the curiosity. And I think humanity is one of our fundamental needs is curiosity. So even at a time if AI is able to be a superhuman mathematician, I still think mathematical activity will also be reading, understanding the proof, find out if there are new problems that can arise from these solved problems, and be able to build even grander theories and have more conjectures and have these AI mathematician automatically close those conjectures. So in the future, I think math discovery is going to be more collaborative. It's going to be GitHub large-scale project. You can toss maybe even the Langlands program into many, many different pieces, and for the AI mathematicians to make progress on all the tiny pieces. And then maybe mathematicians will be functioning on a totally different abstraction level to be kind of overseeing how these progress come together. And I think that's extremely exciting. I actually think that's why Ken joins, because he sees a new way of doing mathematics. And I think some of his peers are also slowly realizing that and also sending us a lot of requests for proofs for auto-formalization, which is to convert a math paper they just recently wrote into Lean. Because digitalizing all modern mathematics is actually another ambition that a lot of the frontier mathematicians do have.
And do you guys ever disagree on anything?
We disagree on what problems to pick. So, I'm a number theorist. He's also a number theory. There are certain problems that I kind of grew up and dreaming about. I just want to push the gap from a certain number to a certain number, and then Ken will think, well, that's just too hard. He's an expert. He knows the mechanism of how to approach something like that. But then I always disagree and be like, well, you never know, because we were surprised by our technical capability again and again.
And you are one of a lot of neolabs, which we write about quite a bit. They're kind of this phenomenon right now. Startups valued at over $1 billion that don't have a product. A lot of people see this as proof of an AI bubble. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think the definition of neolab is something deep focus on research, which we do have, and lack of commercialization plan. I actually think that in our case, the transferability of math theorem proving, formal theorem proving, into formal verification of code, such as on the famous benchmark code Verina, we actually saturated it. Also the transferability to, say, hardware verification. We have been proving a lot of the industrial partners, circuit designs, and those are cases where they say no other formal checker could do. So I think we actually have a pretty clear kind of commercialization goals that we're working toward. So which make us disqualify for one of those fancy neolabs list.
But what about the rest of them?
What about the rest of them? I think there are a lot of very, very interesting kind of directions that the neolabs are pursuing. Specifically, me personally, I think personal intelligence, continual learning, that's something I'm quite bullish about. I'm actually less bullish about the sort of energy-based model approach. So I think neolabs in that category will find it a bit hard to explore both a fundamental technological shift, if it succeeds, and also kind of what the business implications are. Of course, that can be proven wrong. I think neolabs in terms of AI for science in general, life sciences or molecular, material sciences and other kind of science labs, I would say, is something that I think have quite a lot of promises and are usually actually undervalued.
And another thing we write about all the time is the talent wars with the OpenAIs and Metas offering hundreds of millions of dollars. You have to compete against them. You have to compete against the neolabs.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I'm sure the $1.6 billion valuation helps, but how else do you do
I don't know. I think so. Perhaps we had a little bit of a head start. We're actually one of the very early once after SSI and Thinking Machine, there was probably not a lot of new labs around back then. We had really amazing talents coming from big tech. They are industry veterans. They are, a bit tired of the PSC culture or all the politics at big shops, and they just want to work at a place where they feel like, it's not sort of like job security because it is a startup. There's no job insecurity, but more like security for the research direction. Like when you're in a big lab and your research direction changes on like a monthly, if not weekly basis, that's actually another sort of security they are pursuing, right? Like you want to work at a place where you know that what you're working on still has impact in like 2 months, right? And then like for us, where we are very clear in declaring that the company's DNA will be math and always be math, we're not pivoting, we're not shifting, we could generalize into the few commercial areas that we find promising and talk to people in those fields that we consider pretty relevant to apply the technology into, but the fundamental does not change. And I think that's something quite appealing. It's like, we're not gonna rest until we get to the moon, which is, I think, the definition of a moonshot startup or a new lab.
Yeah, which is very topical. All right, well, we're gonna finish with a lightning round.
Okay.
So get ready, everyone.
Got it.
All right, what job do you think will be obsolete first, coders or mathematicians?
Like completely obsolete? I'm gonna say mathematicians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which startup founder do you most admire?
A lot of them. I like Liam from Periodic Labs, Liam Fetus.
Liam Fetus.
Yeah, Eric Seligman from Humans End, Andrew Dye from Elorian. Yeah.
Which big tech CEO do you most admire?
Demis Hassabis, DeepMind. I actually do admire like Elon at XAI. I think the changes he makes are necessary.
Which startup do you think is most underrated?
Which startup? I think, so our actually upstairs neighbor, Parallel, they are in the search space. I think both Parallel and Ixa building sort of search for AI and agents. It's something that is going to be a huge category.
Okay, and which startup do you think is most overrated?
Oh God. Most overrated. I think our competitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's Harmonic, we should say,
Yeah,
founded
okay.
by, but they were founded in 2023. You
Yeah.
were founded last year. You already are valued at more than them, but they are backed by NVIDIA, so you got to get those GPUs.
I try to be grounded in my things.
Okay. All right. What's more valuable in a year, OpenAI or Anthropic?
Tide?
Tide. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Trying to play safe here.
Yeah. Smart. All right. Which company is the one that tries to poach most of your researchers?
Thinking Machine.
Okay. And was math invented or discovered?
Oh, Jesus. Invented upon a certain minimal threshold so people can start discovery.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a number to represent your personality, what would it be and why?
4. Everyone says in Chinese culture 4 is extremely unlucky, so I like to be an underdog, I want to be, 4. And it's a square, so, yeah.
And I have to say, ChatGPT came up with that question,
Awesome.
not me. And
Yeah, I love it.
So, just to be honest there. All right, finally, what's a hot take or prediction for the year ahead that would surprise most people in our audience?
Prediction the year ahead. I think that software verification is going to play a more mainstream role in the AGI timeline. So in other words, it's not to be thought of as an infrastructure that's complementary to, say, the Gen AI in terms of, like it cleans up people's mistakes or sort of like solves hallucination. I think the fundamental promise of software verification is you have infinite number of agents being able to produce verified output, pass it on to each other, and just keep building from there. All the code shipped directly to deployment. And I think that's verified superintelligence, which is going to compound and accelerate the entire AGI timeline. So it's not to be thought of as something that fixes mistakes, but something that is going to make the upside of superintelligence 1,000 times larger, if not more.
I don't know if that qualifies as a hot take, but at least a technical one.
Okay.
So, no, we like that. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.